These are in listen-only mode.
Okay. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're sitting. I'd like to thank you for joining us for this next level webinar titled PMP Exam Has Changed. What does that mean for you? This webinar will be presented by one of our New Horizons instructors, Michael Peasley. My name is Brian. I will be your MC for the event. If you have any questions throughout the presentation today, please make sure to put those either in the questions or chat box in the lower right-hand corner, so that way Michael or I can answer those for you throughout the presentation. Just so everybody knows, this webinar will be recorded. So after the webinar, we will be sending out a follow-up email that'll have a link to the webinar to our recordings on our YouTube channel for you to go back and watch the webinar. I will also share the slide deck through the handouts here in just a little bit. Mike, if you go to the next slide for me. So as always, this webinar is presented by New Horizons Computer Learning Centers. Who is New Horizons? We are a proven worldwide training provider with flexible learning solutions covering a broad spectrum of topics, with over 2,100 classrooms, 2,400 instructors in over 56 countries. With that being said, I'd like to pass it over to Mike so he can begin his presentation.
All right, thanks a lot, Brian. Let's get right to it. That would be a picture of me. And some of my certifications, I have been with New Horizons actually since 98. I was an applications instructor, technical instructor, did a little bit of work on the corporate side, kind of more over where Brian is right now on the product management side. Did that for a while, then got back into the classroom. I've been there since '07. So that's got a smattering, I guess, of my certs, COBIT, Lean Six Sigma, PMP, ITIL, kind of all that process, project management, infrastructure management stuff. That's kind of my wheelhouse. So the first curriculum after I came back into the instructor pool was the PMP. So that's kind of what brings me here today, because that's the topic of discussion. So I'm assuming that if you are attending this, you either have some of your people working in your organization who are moving towards or trying to earn that PMP certification, or you yourself are doing this. So I don't want to drop too far back into it, but if that is indeed where your point of interest is, then we're going to want to talk about those PMP exam basics. Then we're going to talk about something what actually did change along with the exam, and really what kind of documents the change of the exam, which is the exam content outline. And I believe we'll also have that document available to you, but I also have a link at the end of this presentation where you can go download that right off the PMI website. Ultimately, the exam content outline, as the name really says, specifies what's going to be in the exam. You know, a lot of people think that the end-all, be-all definition of what's on the PMP exam is the project management body of knowledge, the PMBOK. And that's not necessarily the case. The PMBOK, anything that's within the PMBOK, the book, again, the guide, the 5th edition guide, anything in there could be on the exam, but there are things that are on the exam that are not specifically covered in that guide. So why are they changing the exam content outline? What are the benefits? And then ultimately, probably what most of you are really curious about is, you know, what's this going to do to me and my plans on achieving the PMP certification? And then important dates and those information links. And again, if you have questions, I've got the chat window open. Go ahead and ask me as we go along. I'll address those. So the basics of the PMP. In order to be eligible, you've got to meet those minimum requirements, 3 different criteria areas. You've got to have project management experience, formal education, and project management training hours. So I guess the big thing here, I would hope most of you are familiar with these. These are, again, right in the PMP handbook that you can download off of the PMI website. So this is just, you know, the reality of the PMI certification program. There is the desire that you have a bachelor's as opposed to a high school diploma, but if you have a high school diploma, you can kind of fill in that gap with additional hours of experience needed. The time frame for submitting those, when you're allowed to count those, and then project management training hours. which we have our exam prep class, our PMP and CAP-M class, which actually preps for both of those, provides 35 hours of formal registered PMI. We are a registered education provider, so really kind of checks that box. It's up to the applicant to provide all the other documentation. None of that has changed, nor has really the way the exam is structured. And this is something that a lot of times when I present this in my classes, some people, I don't know, they're a little bit annoyed by this fact, but it has always been the case. You're going to do a 200 question test, has not changed, but only 175 of those are scored. So the percentages, again, which it takes to pass, 61%, are based on those 175 questions that actually count. Now the thing is, the ones that don't count, the remaining questions, which are inserted randomly in the exam, are considered pre-test questions used to test the validity of future questions. So the exam has been revised, but over the past couple of years, they've been taking new questions related to these updates to the exam content outline, and they've been, in effect, testing these test questions. So here is the impact on the exam. There are new topics covered on the exam, and those relate to the revised tasks in the exam content outline. So that's what we're going to talk about here pretty much for the rest of this session. The point I'm making in this first couple sections here, first couple slides, there is no change to the PMBOK. It is still the 5th edition. We have not gone to a 6th edition of the PMBOK. The exam is in all the same format. All of the prerequisites are changed. So the only thing that has changed is the relative proportion relative to the different domains or dimensions, as they say, that we're going to talk about. And then this new information related to the new tasks that have been added to the roles of a PMP, of a project management professional. That's what the certification is about. So this exam content outline is the blueprint for the PMP exam. Every single question that you will possibly see on the PMP exam is tied to that exam content outline. So if you can go through that exam content outline and you are confident that you know what all of those tasks are, the tasks of a project management professional, and what they actually mean and do, well, if you have all of that, you would have all of the tasks that encompass a domain of practice, as in the practice of being a project management professional. So it specifies those areas, those knowledge and skills that are critical for a project manager to have. And it's a pretty broad, if you're studying for this, you understand this, it's a very broad set of skills. Communication, negotiation, technical skills, given the technical nature of a lot of projects these days. A lot of skills going into, and that's one of the reasons why the PMI has updated this content outline, trying to keep, well, the skills associated with the PMP relevant within today's environment. There's been an evolution of project management. First of all, you even look 10, 15 years ago, the number of, or I would say probably the percentage is a better way of putting it, the percentage of organizations that actually followed some sort of a specified project management methodology was pretty slim number. So it's far more likely that an organization has adopted a project management methodology. The thing about it, though, is, and we should probably even stay away from calling it a methodology, the PMP does not specify a methodology per se, it specifies a framework, a group of good practices. And part of I would say, the evolution of project management is understanding that the nature of projects are changing. They tend to be much more IT focused in general. Why? Because IT has become such a core component of virtually every business out there. So a lot of these changes that are going on out in the environment are being addressed to maintain the relevancy of the certification, to continue to maintain those good project management practices within the PMBOK framework. So they did not change the tools and all the processes of the framework. They are just modifying, and eventually there will be a 6th edition of the PMBOK. But for now, what they really have done is they are, through this changing, they're recognizing the evolution of the jobs, the job skills and job duties of a project manager, and they're updating those good practices. The way they do it is through this RDS study, role delineation study, and this periodic RDS study is a means to that end, trying to look at the role of the project manager, and they are going to do this with any of those roles that they have PMI certifications around. They're doing it with the Agile Certified Professional is currently under an RDS, to try to keep it relevant and current within the project management world. For that matter, if you really think about it, I just mentioned that they are currently, PMI that is, in an RDS of the Agile Certified Professional. If you've been around project management for a while, you know that, well, the traditional project management methodology, that is the PMI Waterfall method, is a very effective framework methodology, if you will, for managing very many projects. But when we are looking at something like a software development project, or any type of project where our end result is not very well known, only loosely defined, we might go into an agile or iterative development type of project management methodology. So even PMI has come to the realization and is open and honest that this methodology that it's been working on for a few decades and refining is not necessarily the correct one for every project that you might manage. A lot of organizations actually are defining their own step-by-step methodology by taking some from the standard PMP framework as well as Agile and Scrum. So what were the changes to the exam content outline? Well, domain by domain, and again, we're talking about the domains of the really domain or process groups in the PMI framework. We do things to initiate a project. We do things to plan a project. We do things to execute. We do things to measure performance, take corrective action, monitor and control, and we do things to close a project. And now I'm going to give you a little bit of a flavor of all of these. We're going to look kind of briefly at each one of them, but this gives you an idea that we have put some additional tasks into initiating and planning, as well as executing and monitor control. Nothing new in closing, but that's across all of those different domains or project process groups, sequential process groups as PMI now refers to it. So added initiating tasks. And if you were to go pull the exam content outline, it has a list of tasks for the project management professional, and it has them numbered, and all these are those numbers within that exam content outline. So that's what these numbers are. It's not supposed to be 1, 2, 3. These are 2, 7, and 8. Identify key deliverables based on the business requirements in order to manage customer expectations and achieve project goals. Conduct benefits analysis with relevant stakeholders to validate project alignment with organizational strategy and expected business value. First two here really are going to this focus on benefits realization, that it seems like a good idea is not a good enough reason to do a project. We've got to do a business case and look at what we're going to create and what are the benefits we're going to get from that, and again, do a business case with a return on investment. Number 8, inform stakeholders of the approved project charter to ensure common understanding of key deliverables, milestones, and their roles and responsibilities. Stakeholder management is the newest knowledge area within the methodology. And a lot of what stakeholder management is taking on in terms of that knowledge area came out of communication. And you see this right here. that basically informing or communicating stakeholders of what this project is, why we're doing it, what we are going to create, and the basics of when it's going to occur and who's going to do what. Kind of adding into that overall management of stakeholder expectations. Planning, there was just one added into planning. Develop the stakeholder management plan by analyzing needs, interests, and potential impact in order to effectively manage expectations of those stakeholders and engage them in project decisions. If we do not engage all of our pertinent stakeholders and get all input from, especially those frontline staff, well, it's highly unlikely that our project is going to do what it needs to do and be well received. So once again, adding into the overall stakeholder management activities of the project management professional. Added executing tasks, manage the flow of information. So plan your communications and how you're going to guide stakeholders through the project, and then actually go out and do that by executing it, and then maintaining stakeholder relationships by following the stakeholder management plan in order to receive the continued support and manage expectations. If we do not engage at the correct degree of rigor, if you will, across all of our stakeholders, we either are not going to see requirements or changes in requirements, or they're going to kind of start to forget what it is we're exactly doing. More important than forget, they're going to start remembering things that they think we're doing that we are not. And that's why we want to maintain stakeholder communication, maintain that relationship. Monitor and controlling, capture, analyze, and manage lessons learned using lessons learned management techniques in order to enable continuous improvement. PMI has always said we do lessons learned. Traditionally, lessons learned occur during project or phase closure. And here we have it during monitoring and controlling. Now, monitoring and controlling really is a process group that surrounds all the other process groups. It's looking at how we did something and looking to improve how we did it. And it could go all the way up to strategy in terms of initiating, was this a good strategy, all the way down through planning and executing the project. So this is nothing new, this lessons learned. What is kind of a new perspective is that we oftentimes do not get time at the end of the project to do lessons learned. So learn your lesson wherever it is, and make sure we have tools where we can capture lessons learned whenever we accomplish it, because otherwise we will not. Let's see, just looking at questions here. Otherwise, again, we're not going to get it right because we're going to repeat our mistakes potentially. Let's see, that a passing score is 61%. Yep, that is the correct passing score. It is a fairly low sounding score, but that is correct. The 35-hour class 2 years ago would still count as satisfying the requirement. You took a PMP certification course in November 2015. Do you need to retake the training? No. Nothing changed in terms of the actual PMBOK. It's simply that exam content outline, which I see is down in the handouts. So if you have this PowerPoint deck and that handout right there, the person who asked about, you took training in November, if you want to know what that impact on you is, take a look at the slides that I've just kind of gone through right here, these added tasks. Look at the exam content outline, and you'll see what new activities you're going to be kind of expected to understand. So you don't need to retake the training. It passes all of the requirements and all of that. You just want to understand, really, this is what this is going to do, is give you a greater understanding of the relative proportion of all of these different activities that are going to be in there. So monitoring, and can we email the presentation? I suppose I could. Send me an email and I will send it to you. And that is, again, michael.peasley@nhls.com. So let's see. And the last one, monitor procurement activities according to the procurement plan in order to verify compliance with project objectives. More and more businesses are realizing that when it comes to doing a project, we need to recognize those things that we should do ourselves versus those things that we should potentially have somebody else do. So if we are going to have somebody else do it, we've got to manage them just like they are on the project. Why? Because they're on the project. They just are a special type of stakeholder that does not report that same bottom line, I guess you could say, as us. All right. So what do these changes seek to accomplish? I inserted a seek there. I guess from a PMI perspective, it accomplishes this. An emphasis on business strategy, the value of lessons learned, the project charter responsibility, which is really, really critical, and also, as I was talking about, enhancing stakeholder relationships. So what does it do for business strategy? Well, what this is saying is that project managers are more involved in project initiation. When I was a project manager at New Horizons, we were a much smaller organization there. At the time, it was called NH Michigan, not even Great Lakes or Learning Solutions. We were just in Michigan. And I was part of, relative to now, a small management team. Therefore, when we had discussions about projects, I was not just the project manager, not being dismissive of that, but I was also kind of a business manager, and because of my experience in the company, I was ultimately part of some of the strategic decision making. I didn't make strategic decisions, but I certainly I had the ear of the marketing director and the CEO. And I think that whether formally or informally, that put me into that was maybe an influencer, right? And really, ultimately, that's what it is. So benefits realization focus as opposed to deliverables is what we are talking about here. That we want, rather than just traditional project management, let me check off my deliverable, it's done. No, we want to produce something that creates a tangible benefit, a benefit to be realized. Let me see if I can capture that. All right. So let's see. Lessons learned. Greater emphasis on continuous learning. And as I said earlier, lessons learned are frequently missed. The idea of a lessons learned, whether it's a document or a system, however we accomplish it, is that we want to learn as an organization. So if I have a problem, a risk event that occurs, or something that could occur again and create defect or difficulty, I want to go ahead and learn that organizationally, not just personally. And I might not manage that project the next time through. So I've got to have a way to document a lesson learned, as we say here, whenever that lesson is learned. Oftentimes there is no time for lessons learned. Traditionally, lessons learned was during project closure. Unfortunately, oftentimes, what project closure is, that's after we have completed all deliverables. Well, I just mentioned this focus on deliverables. When you're done with the deliverables, a lot of people will say, well, you're done with the project. Project management theory says, no, we need to go through a formal closure procedure, including documenting lessons learned. Unfortunately, oftentimes business pressures mean that we don't have time to do closure, we just get our next project. So PMI is really recognizing this, and this is what I totally agree with. I mean, I profess all the time the need for lessons learned, but I can tell you there's times where it just never seemed like there was a time to actually go through and document those. So let's create, as I said, lessons learned management techniques that allow for us to capture that organizational information and then make it available for others to use. And then the project charter. Projects are undertaken for strategic reasons, and in larger organizations, very few PMs actually define the strategy. Like I said, smaller organization maybe, but certainly in organizations that do embrace a formal project management methodology, the larger the organization, the more complex they are, the more mature they are as a business, the more likely that they do have formalized project management. And then as you get larger and larger, it's far more likely that the PMs are not necessarily participating in anything strategic decision-making wise. So PMs authorizing the charter risk meeting PM rather than customer requirements. So, excuse me, we don't want to have this project end up, the result of the project, I should say, looking like what I want as the project manager. We've got to know who are the ones who actually that we're doing this for, so that they are satisfied by the end result of the project. So there is a serious risk there, the risk that we end up doing a project that looks like what we want and not what our customers want. Share the recording later. Let me these. I've got that. Will you share the recording later? And also a handbook which outlines what has changed. Yep, on the information links in just a couple slides. And the slide deck, if you look down the bottom of your GoToMeeting control screen, right down there it says handouts, there is the exam content outline and this PowerPoint, and within that PowerPoint and also the link I'm going to give you, it does show the specific changes that you need to be able to address when you sit for the exam. Let's see. So stakeholder relationships, this was the last business-focused benefit. Stakeholder management, like I said, is the newest knowledge area within the methodology, but regardless of that's just got that academic statement that it's a new knowledge area, who cares? The importance of it is, well, we do projects to benefit stakeholders. So projects managed without active stakeholder engagement risk missing the mark. Oop, there's a typo there. Understanding the variety of stakeholder perspectives is critical. So we've got to gather all pertinent stakeholder input and make sure that we factor that in. Now, there's always a prioritization of stakeholders, and there are certainly more prominent and key stakeholders. So this doesn't say we do everything every stakeholder wants us to do, but we do need to try to factor in all different stakeholder interests. All right, so let's get to, what do they say, the brass tacks of it, right? What does it mean? 25% new content topics come from those 8 new tasks. A large percentage of the questions related to all topics will be changing just to refresh the exam. So basically, we're taking those new tasks, they are taking those new tasks and mixing in new content. 25% of that new content is going to come from the 8 new tasks. The other 75% of that new content is not new information, it is just new topics, refreshed topics, probably some of those test questions that previous candidates were answering prior in prior versions of the exam. So, important dates. Well, to be honest with you, there aren't any real dates associated with this anymore because, well, other than the fact that they've happened in the past. I think we originally were going to do this within a week or so of that date, but for some other reasons it kind of got bumped to a different time. But we now are at the point where anybody taking the exam will be taking the exam related to the revised exam content outline. All of our curriculum has been appropriately updated to reflect the changes. It was relatively minor, to be honest with you, because the curriculum, again, is built around teaching the framework, and then it's up to the candidate to understand, well, what are all the activities that the PM would be responsible for. Again, that comes from the exam content outline. So here are the information links. Someone asked about the actual changes, and that's a page that actually has just those changes listed. The second link down here, that is the actual certification exam outline. You've heard me mention it several times. That's the exam content outline. It says June 2015. That's because that is when it was finalized. So that is the correct one, and that is the one that ultimately is your study guide that tells you, again, what are the tasks that you need to be familiar with. It also gives the relative proportions that come from each of the different process groups and a bunch of other exam information. You're going to want to definitely build that into your study plan for the PMP exam. And then, of course, if you are interested in any project management training, you can go to nhlearningsolutions.com, click that link, and it actually has already gone on there to the Find Training Project Management tab, where you will see all of our project management offerings of New Horizons Learning Solutions. That said, that really is the heart of it. I don't want to make more of it than it needs to be. Don't want to take any more of your time. I appreciate your attendance, and we will monitor that question window. I believe I have addressed all questions, but from my perspective, that's what I have. My email address, again, michael.peasley, Peasley, at nhls.com. It's right at the beginning of the slide deck as well that you can download. Let me know if you have any other questions. If not, Brian, that's what I've got.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Michael. It looks like one did come in the question box. It says, what is the difference between moderately competent and competent on the exam results?
Yeah, that's the crazy way that PMI, they used to, when I actually took it, they would give you a percentage within each of those exam domains. And now what they've basically done is they've said, we're going to give you your overall percentage score, and that's what determines whether or not you pass or fail. But then relative to each one of those domains, they're going to say whether you are proficient, mildly proficient, or lacking in proficiency. And basically what that's saying is, did you really strongly pass? Were you kind of in the middle, or did you, well, kind of fail a section? The strange part about it, if you were to go into that exam content outline and look at the percentages, I mean, you could, if you look at initiating, you could get 100% of the initiating wrong, in which case they're going to say you're lacking in proficiency, but still pass the test. So I don't know. A lot of people don't really like those. What are you going to do with those afterwards? I guess you could know the area. If you were to fail, you might know the areas you were most weak, but it's really kind of tough to track it down that way. So yeah, that's just how they used to give percentages. Now it's one of those three qualitative measures.
Fantastic. Mike, there's a couple more questions in there as well. The next one is the RMC PMP Exam Prep book still 8th edition? He says, I assume so, since PMBOK is still 5th edition. Mike?
I'm sorry, I wasn't muted. Okay, I'm assuming that RMC is Rita Mulcahy. I'm assuming that, and that would be the case. Yeah, none of the exam prep authors that I'm aware of, none of them have updated anything, because there really is nothing to update, so to speak. Sure, I could type in there so it's copyable. Make sure I didn't typo it. There you go. There's my email address as well.
And then the next one, do you offer any simulations with new changes?
We don't really do simulations in our project management classes. We kind of do case studies in some of our professional development classes, which are intended for people who are already certified as PMPs. But for the most part, our classes are really kind of, the project management classes are kind of theory, lecture-based, with exam prep mixed into it. So no real simulations.
Okay. Then there's, can you discuss changes or experience with the fact the PMP exam is adaptive? Example, if you get questions wrong, you get more of those.
Are you saying that the PMP exam is in fact adaptive?
That's the question, yeah.
I don't believe it is. The way that the PMP exam operates is when you log in at a Prometric Center, it pulls down 200 questions, and you could go click, 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 all the way to question number 200 and start working in reverse. So unless, again, to the best of my knowledge, and I believe that myself to be correct, I do not believe it is adaptive. That was a Microsoft thing, but we do not. I don't believe it's adaptive testing. A couple other ones. Let me see. Testing centers are at prometric.com. Put that link there. We are not associated with them. We used to have Prometric Test Centers. I guess some of us still might be, but that's really a separate entity that does the testing. And they are all over the place. You bet, on clarification. And then the last one, what book is used for the PMI Professional Business Analyst? You kind of have me on that one. I do not do the BA classes. We have another instructor. Tell you what, whoever asked that question, if you send me, I've got, I put my email address there. Send me an email and let me, go kind of bird dog that one. I can send it to our BA instructor and find out what books are being used. I do not know.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Mike. That seems like you got through all of them. So thank you so much. Oh, wait, hold on. One more. How much of, do you see it there? Okay.
Yeah. How much of PMP certification has demand knowing that industry is heading towards agile methodology? This is something that I think is just an evolution of our understanding of project management methodology. Initially, PMI said, here is the waterfall method. You can use it to build a house, build a bridge, install a server room, build an application. It's a one-size-fits-all. And the reality of that is that's not true. So that's where other methodologies have come in. Now let me kind of flip side of that coin. Some practitioners of Agile methodology will say, well, Agile methodology is only for software development. And I look at that and I go, no, you don't get to limit. Nobody owns Agile. It's a very loose, they call it the Agile Manifesto in the Agile community. So if I want to go and look at the PMBOK methodology, the standard PMI waterfall, and mix in some Agile to come up with some sort of a hybrid, there's pretty much nobody who can disagree with the need to do it or say I cannot do it. So when you say how much of PM certification has demand knowledge of Agile, this one, the PMP, really none. It would be, if you're going to get tested on your understanding of Agile through a PMI exam, it would be for the Agile Certified Professional exam. So in terms of certification, PMI views them as separately. In terms of the real world, what I am discovering is that more and more organizations are kind of creating their own branded methodology using a mix of traditional waterfall and Agile based off of the nature of their projects. So if you're from a certification perspective, they are different. They test you on those different in the two different exams. The real world is we need to know how to manage projects no matter what they are and how they unfold. So definitely, it's going to be one of those things as a project manager we need to know.
Yeah, if you need the PowerPoint, thanks a lot, Mike, for answering that question. If you need the PowerPoint, it's right under handouts underneath the webinar section on the right-hand side of the screen. And I'll leave it open for a little while so everybody can download it from there. I'm getting an error when you click the link. Okay, Dominic, if you could send me an email, actually, and I'll put my email address in here. I can email it to you directly. NHL, make sure I spelled it right. And that is my email address. If you email me, I can email it to you directly. Or anybody else that's on here that's having trouble downloading it, just email me there. I'll email you with the response. And then that looks like it's all the questions. So I first want to thank Mike for taking time to present this for us. We really do appreciate it. I'd like to thank everyone who's on here for showing up, taking time in your day to listen to Mike talk. Hopefully, you learned a little bit of something to take away. And then also a reminder that we will be sending out a follow-up email with a link to the recording of the webinar for you to go back and review whenever you might want to. So thanks again, Mike. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.
All right, have a great day, everyone.